Think Outside the Lines is a space for anyone ready to stop checking boxes, to step off autopilot, and create the life you actually want, with clarity, intention, and alignment. Whether you're questioning the default path, rebuilding from scratch, or just looking to feel a little more like yourself. I'm Sean. My guest today is a powerhouse executive in professional hockey who chose a quiet act of rebellion, going alcohol-free in a culture where drinking is practically in the job description. We're discussing what you find on the other side of normal when you stop outsourcing your ability to cope. If you've ever felt successful on the outside while something didn't fit, join me as we think outside the lines with Toni Will. All right, Toni, there's a line from your submission that's been sitting with me. You said that you've had to repeatedly redefine who you are as a leader and as a person while operating in a male-dominated industry that often rewards burnout, overwork, and normalized drinking. That is very specific, but also something I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to. So give me some insight into what your journey's been like for you so far.
Yeah, so I'd like to point out that a lot of this has unfolded over time. And so I've been in this role as the general manager of the Kalamazoo Wings for 11 years now, going on 12. And so there's been many different iterations of who I am. And one stepping into pro sports, and it wasn't on purpose. It happened completely on accident, not knowing that my gender would even play a role. I didn't think as a white woman I would be the minority in much. I never gave it any thought, to be quite honest. And so stepping into this, and I felt like in order to be successful, I needed to belly up to the bar with the boys. Now, I say that, it's not like I was lily white walking into this place in my mid-30s. I was already a work hard, play hard kind of gal. And it gave me even more of an excuse to lean into that identity of a drinker. And so I just continued to abuse alcohol in a way that I thought fit in with what I did for a living. The problem was it didn't fit in with my core values. And I wasn't able to really understand that until several years into the role. And so it is in a nutshell, I didn't know who I was because I found myself in a space where I didn't see myself going. And I think that's super relatable because most people don't know what their path is. And so, that's been a little bit of the backstory. I found the clarity when I put down drinking, when I shed that from my life back in October of 2020 at the beginning-ish of COVID. And I walked back into hockey because we were dark during that season. We didn't play. I came back into this space, a totally different person, and had to figure out how I was going to lead differently as a sober person in a world that is not just the sports world, but a world as a whole that glorifies alcohol. And so that's what I did.
So I'm very fascinated by the alcohol component in particular, and I want to dive into that a little more in a bit. You mentioned that you fell into this by accident, and I feel like that happens to so many people in their what becomes like a sometimes decades-long career. So maybe talk a little more about that, because I'm curious how you fall into something like professional hockey by accident. But also, I'd really like to know, like specifically as it pertains to men's professional hockey, take me through what that experience has been like for you specifically and what challenges you've faced, how you've navigated them, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So this is some advice I give because people ask me a lot, like, how did you get into this job? And the short answer is on accident. And then I'll wrap up with that when I tell the story about the advice I give, because sports is a sexy industry. Seemingly. Yeah. And I agree with that word wholly. So what happened was I spent the first 13 years of my career in banking. I worked for 2 different banks throughout those 13 years that went through different bank mergers. They were one bank when I started. They were another bank when I left. And because I had my degree in business management from Western Michigan University, naturally at 22, 23 years old, I should be managing people was my belief. And somehow I convinced those people that I reported to that I'd be good at that. And I've been leading, and that's what happened. I've been leading teams through transitions since I graduated from college. So that's been 25 years now. And leading teams through transitions teaches you a lot, especially in banking, because second to healthcare, banking is and finances is a very sensitive topic for people. So I was able to cut my teeth in an industry as a leader and in sales in a coming of age era for myself in a way that I didn't even understand how helpful and impactful it would be later in my career. I get antsy though. I need challenges. And that's evident as anyone who's looked at my bio, which there's a little imposter syndrome that comes with that. But what happened is I moved to the Chamber of Commerce, worked in economic development, helping small businesses in my community. I'm born and raised here, so I'm really passionate about Kalamazoo and creating jobs here so people will stay here. And unfortunately, I experienced a very toxic work environment there. I went through a sexual harassment experience, and something I still carry regrets with to this day, but by talking about it openly and writing about it, it has helped. But I left after 2 years, or I tried to get to 2 years because the Gen Xer and me, we like to stay committed and get to 2 years.
Funny, so true.
So true. And then I was mid-30s, 3 kids, a husband, a mortgage, and no money tree in my yard. And I had 4 months with the separation agreement from my past employer to this one. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I really always wanted to own my own business, but I've always had this fear. And I didn't know in my mid-30s what that would be. It wasn't showing itself to me yet. I ended up applying. I went and applied for different things, nonprofit, for-profit, sales, not sales, and I applied for a job in a high-end fashion boutique here in Kalamazoo, Michigan called Sydney. And now it's a Starbucks, FYI, but it sits inside the Radisson Plaza Hotel, which is our marquee hotel here downtown Kalamazoo. And HR called me. And because I worked for the chamber, a lot of people knew who I was in the community. And they said, Toni, you're going to be overqualified for this. And I said, I know. And they said, but you're going to be bored. I'm like, that's okay. I don't want to be the face of anything. I really want to I'm interested in retail. I'm interested in fashion and might turn into something for me. I don't know. And they said, we're a talent-based organization. We want people who are going to stay here.
God.
And I'm like,
I've heard that before. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this is going nowhere. And I thought it would be the end of the story. And you're wondering, how does this lead to hockey? They called me back 3 weeks later and they said, we've got something for you. And I said, what's that? And they said, the Kalamazoo Wings. And I go, the hockey team? And they said, yeah, now I've grown up here. So and the team at that point was 40 years old. So I'd gone to a handful of games. Like, it's been around longer than I've been alive. And so
it's still part of the culture. And for people that don't know, hockey is very embedded in the culture where it exists in those towns.
Very. And I'm like, it's still around. And they said, yeah, that's why we want you to go there. And I'm like, I don't know shit about hockey. That's literally what I said, because I was so confused. And they said, at this level of hockey. So there's 3 levels of professional hockey. There's the NHL, there's the AHL, and then the ECHL, which is the league the Kalamazoo Wings play in. And we're affiliated at the AHL and NHL. We develop players to move up and down this system. And
Gotcha.
So they just said, at this level, the general managers, they don't handle the on-ice product at all. That's the head coach, director of hockey operations. The GMs at this level handle everything business related: sales, marketing, community relations, public relations, broadcasting.
Okay.
And all those departments report to me. And so they said, here's why we think you're going to be good at this. 1, you know how to sell. You can train people how to sell. You're great at transitions, because I've been through these bank mergers. And you love Kalamazoo. And I said, okay. Then they told me the pay. And thank God I'm a mission over money girl, because it was a 35% pay cut from where I was at.
Anything is going to be from banking, I feel like, but that's a lot when you have a family, right?
Mm-hmm. But I believe that if I'm passionate about something, the money will follow. And it has. I've been here 11 going on 12 years. I had no idea when I walked in these doors back in 2015 what was in front of me. Not just in terms of the work in front of me, but the opportunity I would have to lift women up in this space. And that's a long version of how I got there. So the advice I always give to people looking to get in sports is, don't always look for the perfect job for you in those job postings. You don't need to be on the nose, because you never know what else is out there. I applied for a retail fashion boutique and ended up here. So be
Yeah.
open-minded.
It's interesting because in a lot of these conversations I'm having lately, one of the things that I want people to take away from them is just the notion that like you can fall into things by accident, and that a lot of the skills that you cultivate early on in your career, regardless of the job that you're doing, are transferable, especially leadership skills, because I don't know, I don't think people are taught leadership skills very well, mostly. And so if you are, that's such a blessing, right? And it can be such a gift that you can take with you throughout your career. You mentioned that a belief that you had to unlearn was that if something was culturally normal, especially in high-performing male-dominated environments, that it was automatically healthy or required for success. This spoke to me as a gay man who has tried very hard to exist in the corporate world, but never truly felt like a member of that boys club, that it's mostly unspoken, but it definitely exists. Mm-hmm. Can you say more about what this is like for women in particular?
Yeah, I can. And I'm still trying to figure it out. So I'll sit in meetings, and this happened last week, where it's like this. I want to be professional because I could use different language, but it's a whole lot of just bravado and men just like golf and sports and just stupid jokes, and not like offensive, but just machismo, and not considering the whole room. And it makes someone like me or you feel like an outsider. And I don't think that they're trying to do that to me or you. Yeah. I just don't think they know how to relate, or
they just have the self-awareness.
Exactly. So and then it's the little things. I find it's a lot of micro, not macro aggressions. And so it's like they'll start a board meeting. Hey guys, let's get going, or gentlemen. And I'm like, nope, I have a vagina and I want to. And then there's been the macro, but that's been sprinkled. Like those bombs have been dropped fewer and far between. But there was one time I was told that I lacked common sense. And I wrote on a Post-it note. I wrote it because I didn't want to say it. I wrote, I don't lack common sense. I just lack a penis. I didn't say it out loud, and I kept that. I still have it. And there have been times where I've had to be publicly apologized to in board meetings because of how I was treated. And I can't imagine if I were, and I'm a straight white woman. Can you imagine if I was a straight black woman, or a gay black woman, or a gay white man, or all the different, so I can relate in that feeling like an outsider. And I wrote about a lot of that in my book because I've just decided I was going to be my definition of success in spite of all that.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, like the word outsider has always been really fascinating to me, because I guess by default that could be the word, but it's almost like I don't feel like an outsider so much as I don't feel like an insider. And that those feel like different things to me. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Because
you're qualified, right? You deserve a seat at that table, but
But I think differently. No, it's okay. But I think differently because I am a woman, and I felt more like an insider when I was drinking.
Yeah.
And then that version of me is different now. So I feel more outside.
Yeah, totally. That's fascinating, actually. Your story is obviously in your industry are very specific, but I really do feel like so much of your experience feels universal with respect to a lot of the lessons that you've learned. I feel like there's probably somebody listening right now who is trying their best to navigate some of this in real time. What would you say that might help them? Is there a perspective or insight that you could share that maybe you wish you could have heard along the way?
Yeah. And there's so much I could offer. It depends where the person is at. But what I have found is to start to look for content, material, people that are like-minded. So this podcast you and I are doing, if they're listening to this, they probably can relate to what you and I are doing. So dive into other content that you and I are building that will lead you to other authors, podcasters, books to read. It will lead you to Facebook communities, or whether it's on social media or not. But if you follow the breadcrumbs, you will find people that feel the exact same way. And when you're validated that way, your confidence starts to rise that I'm not crazy, I'm not alone. And you can start to really, it's a choice to lean into that. So part of what I do and what led me to such a big lifestyle change was I picked up a book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And I read that book and I'm like, that's how I feel about alcohol. Oh my gosh, it's not just AA and O'Doul's. I could do this in a different way. And that book changed my pathway when it came to my relationship with alcohol, which changed my trajectory with my career, which changed me becoming an entrepreneur later. And the dominoes started to fall. So I say it sounds simplistic, but really can change your life.
It sounds also like just pay attention, right? Because there's so many resources available to you, to your point, that I think that people just need to be more aware and pay attention. So my background is in gaming and tech, where industries where there are just not a lot of females, especially females in leadership, right? Which was always strange to me because I genuinely believe, and I have evidence to support this, women tend to be better, more compassionate leaders, like full stop. And so I always found myself eager to foster opportunities to help facilitate their path to those sort of opportunities. How can someone who might be listening right now do a better job to influence this sort of change in their organization, especially in male-dominated industries where they might receive pushback?
Yeah. So I'm going to use this in two areas because you've talked about you're gay. I'm a woman in a male-dominated industry. So the first thing that I would recommend is if it doesn't exist, create it.
Yeah.
So in the league I work in, there was no women-specific anything. Now, I was creating like in our league meetings, I was like, hey, can we have a panel or a breakout session specific to women in sports? So I just took that a step further and said, I'd like to create, a lack of a better term, a resource group for the league as a whole for women in sports. And because my role as a governor, which I can explain that title, it's like a board of directors, but we're governors, and the GM, they were like, yeah, run with it. And so I've done that. And I'm like, I'm going to create a mentor-mentee program too. And I'm going to create a monthly or by every other month meeting and bring in expert speakers for these women. I'd like to host an in-person event or a league meeting. So I just started to create it. So my advice is if it doesn't exist, create it. If you're like, Toni, I'm not in a role where I can create this, find that person in your organization that aligns with you on this and have them sponsor it, that have the power to do it. And I would say if in your world, like gaming and tech, is there an LGBTQ plus resource group? Create it, if not. And we started that within the hospitality, or I didn't do that, but someone else did, because we started one for women in hospitality too. So people will follow suit. Like there's one for military veterans, there for our people of color too, like different religions. These can be created. You just got to raise your hand. And this is the thing I got to just drive home. It's okay if you don't know how to do it. It's okay. Yeah. There's people that have gone before you that will help.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, because to your point, yes, I think there's a differentiation between the groups that you speak about, because yes, those are really important, right? Have those specific groups within the organization. I guess I'm speaking more of like when you have the power as someone in leadership, how do you help bring more people up behind you? And I ask that because I don't always know the answer. I think for me, it was a lot of asking questions of like, how can I better support you? What do you need? Because even someone that was in the midst of it, I constantly found myself reflecting on how I could have done a better job at influencing that sort of change.
Yeah. One of the things I do is and even whoever's listening to this podcast, your audience, if they want to get time with me, I always offer up 30 minutes. And it's just to mentor. It's just like being available, and I connect them. I respond to my own emails. Yes, I have an assistant, and yes, she will book the meeting, but I respond to my own stuff. And that's important to me because my whole goal in all the work I do, and also launching my podcast, Women In, a couple of years ago, was to get these generations, whether they're Gen Xers on down or maybe they're boomers too. I don't care. Get in the elevator with me. We're going up together. This isn't about Toni Will. This is about everyone. Anyone that come with me and I will help you get there. So that's how I do it for me. And that's why I started my podcast too, to tell stories.
Yeah. And other people listening, the other thing I always like to really drive home is that it sounds so cliche, but you're only as strong as your weakest link, and you're only as good as your team. And it's about, and this is why like the conversations that we have a lot lately around DEI, right? And there's the pushback against that. I'm like, why we are so much stronger when we're like, we have different points of view. And I always found that every time our team would have success, it's like, you have to give credit to the people the only thing I take credit for is building a strong team, right? The work that's done from there is the team, and you have to pass that credit back to them. right? So the conversations like this are really fascinating to me because I also want to bring people into that elevator and bring them up, right?
Mhm.
And how do we collectively continue that objective?
Yeah. And I think it's about authenticity.
Totally.
I mean it. You mean it. There are people out there that say it, but don't do it. And I think there's a distinction. And I walk the walk. And am I busy?
And your team knows that. Your team knows when you're authentic, right? They know when you're bullshitting them and they know when you're being candid with them. People appreciate that.
They do. And one of my greatest strengths, I think, is building a culture within my staff. And I'm really proud of that. I have very little turnover, which you generally don't see at this level of hockey. Usually it's churn and burn. And that is not the case. Our tenure here is long. People want to stay here. And that's because of the culture I built. And I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, same. I left my last corporate job about a year ago, but I felt the same. And I was so proud of the fact that like our team was diverse. We had people wanted to stick around. There was like, the only reason people would leave often was because of layoffs, which are like completely beyond your control. But that's like a good thing, a good problem to have, even though it's not. Okay, I want to dive in more into the alcohol piece because you've said that alcohol has quietly become the way that you manage stress, pressure, and emotional load, and that it was dulling your clarity and confidence. I think that this speaks to so many more people than they probably even realize. I know that I've used alcohol in this way in my own life. Why do you think it is that so many people rely on this when it so clearly does not enhance any aspect of our lives whatsoever, at least not in a positive way? Please say whatever you want to about it.
This is one of my favorite topics. Give me the mic. I just tell you what.
Yeah.
So I think it's number one, it's generational. Like it's been a thing I've been talking about, like us Gen Xers, we were raised like such a pro culture society around alcohol. And I like to talk about, and it does depend on how we were raised too. So when we are born, we're like these little cute, clean slates. We don't have opinions yet. We don't have beliefs yet. And those are in a non-culty way. We're programmed by how we're raised. And so now, was I raised in a household of addiction? No, I was not. But here's the thing about alcohol. If you ingest it, doesn't matter if you were raised around it or not, it is addictive to anybody. It's just if you drink it enough and why you drink it. And you hit on a key word there is coping. It took me a long time to figure out when I slid from a take it or leave it drinker to coping. And it was through my first divorce back in 2008. I didn't know that then, but my brain did. And when you hit that reward center of your brain over and over again, when you're going through something challenging, that's now your brain is associating that with survival.
Yeah.
And so then every time something bad, good, whatever, a day ends and why happens, the lower part of your brain is sending a signal that says, we're going to release that chemical to tell Toni's brain it's time to have a drink. And those chemicals are released before it even hits your lips. And so now it's a losing battle until you realize what the heck is happening. There's so much science involved, but our culture just sets us up to say, if you don't drink, there's something wrong with you. It's the only drug that we have to defend not doing.
Yeah.
Because alcohol is a drug. And when we grew up with Nancy Reagan and cracking the old egg in the frying pan, saying this is your brain on drugs, we are taught that alcohol is never mentioned. Big alcohol has done a fantastic job of convincing everyone that alcohol is separate, but it's a drug. And it's highly addictive.
And that you need it to have a good time. I think that's the other piece to it, because yes, it's addictive, but why do you need it? Why do you have to take that first sip? Say more about the coping aspect of things, because one of the things you mentioned that really struck me was that as it pertained to your drinking, you were outsourcing your ability to relax, celebrate, cope, instead of building those skills yourself. I have to tell you that really hit me when I read that, because it's never occurred to me that when I'm drinking, that's what I'm doing.
So drinking is a shortcut.
Yeah.
What we're talking about when we're building coping tools, that's a skill set.
Yeah.
And so and I wrote a blog about it too, and it's on my website, but it's specific about skill sets versus shortcuts. And so I'm talking about big life things here, like with divorce, my mom died last year. Grief is not fun. And we knew she was passing because she had Alzheimer's. It was a long slow process. But my point is, I could have numbed the grief of her passing or I did with my divorce, but it didn't help me process it because I wasn't actually processing, because I was numbing everything. That's what alcohol is. It anesthetizes things. So to have those skill sets to say, okay, Toni, what helps you when you're sad, down, dealing with something difficult? For me, it was hot baths, reading books, Cool Ranch Doritos, stupid reality TV, mindless things. Like there were just sleep. But these were all things that help me exercise. And are they always what I want to do? No. But it's healthier versions of coping than numbing them out and not even processing it.
I think it's also about like, what I love about your decision to be alcohol free, and I want to stay on this topic for a little while longer because I really think it's something that people can relate to. And there are so many aspects of your decision that kind of bring everything together. So I think it's about being aligned with where you are and where you're going. It's about discipline. It's about reconciling your coping mechanisms. I think it's also about leadership and setting an example on how to show up, most importantly for yourself first, but then by extension others. Not to mention, I feel like there's a freedom in there as well. Freedom from being constrained by this literal poison. How does that factor in on your current trajectory?
Yeah. So as you're reflecting that back to me, this is about, and I mentioned it earlier, core values. So if someone listening to this is like, gosh, I can relate to what she's saying, like there's this inner knowing something's off about my relationship with alcohol, or fill in the blank. For me, it was alcohol. It could be shopping, gambling, pornography. It could be social media. It could be so many things, but there's this inner whisper. And and that whisper gets louder and louder. So where you can start to draw and understand what am I doing with this? I don't know. Is really sit down and figure out what the heck your core values are. Because I hadn't done that. I just knew I felt off. And when I looked at my list of core values, I picked 5 or 6, and you can just go to Google core values and just start to pick through and what you're drawn to. Health and wellness is one of my top core values.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing marathons, 60 triathlons, like Ironmans, like all this stuff, eating right. And then I was getting drunk and blackout. Okay, those two things don't align. So no wonder I was feeling off in this inner knowing. And so it created this cognitive dissonance between my conscious, what I'm thinking, and my subconscious, how I'd programmed it around alcohol. So I say all of that to go back to core values because I am a better leader. I'm a better mom. I'm a better wife. I'm better in a lot of things because I'm actually living aligned now. And if it doesn't fall into that list of core values of integrity, health and wellness, family, humor, I got to think of my other one, but honesty. If it doesn't fall in there, then something's off and I need to change gears.
Yeah. So I agree with you on the core values aspect. What else though would you say to someone that's maybe they're conscious of their alcohol intake and maybe they don't even think they have a problem per se, but want to just be a little more mindful and maybe even try to eliminate it from their life?
Yes. Love this topic because it's not celebrated. Oftentimes we wait with alcohol to be like, oh, I'm not living under a bridge in a trench coat and I have a brown paper bag and I'm paying my bills, so everything must be good. But that's how our culture makes it out.
Or a health scare.
Yeah, or a health scare.
Yeah.
It can be like, I know it's ethanol. I know it's not good for me. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. I just don't want this in my life, but I don't want to deal with the stigma of it. Like, drinking. And so it really is framing it as a health and wellness decision or whatever decision it is. It can go back to those core values. Yeah, this doesn't live in line with my goals that I have. And I want more clarity. Maybe that's a core value. I want to sleep better. I want to, whatever calls to that person where it wasn't necessarily alcohol use disorder. It's just, I don't like how I feel when I do it. And finding language.
Yeah. I know that I don't want to do it is a great period at the end of a sentence, but I know also how big the social component is. And I'm curious, was it just as simple as I'm assuming it wasn't as simple for you to just say, I don't want to do it. Talk more about how you navigated that and how do you encourage others who, again, are interested, maybe want to navigate that aspect of things? Because I think that's probably the hardest part. There's a part 2 to that question, but I'd like to hear you say your answer there.
Yeah. So this speaks to identity.
Yep.
So no, it was not easy. And because my friends called me Toni Party Time. They gave me the stick name.
It's always the fun people that quit drinking first.
Exactly. And I secretly hated it but it was an identity. And I'm like, how do I move from, I didn't even trust myself to be like sober or alcohol free. And I knew I wasn't subscribing to the label alcoholic. So what identity am I working with here?
Yeah.
Because it depends on the person. I know people feel like it's a cop-out, but really your personality plays a role in this. Look, I'm a rebel. So rebels are okay with coloring outside the lines and okay with saying, rebels, you know what, we do things differently. And I leaned into that identity of being a rebel. So 80 at the time I quit, I think it was 87% of Americans drank on average. So I'm part of that 13%. That's cool. That's rebellious. That could be chic in a way. And so that's how I framed it. And that's the identity I took on along with the label alcohol free, because it's empowering. It's not alcoholic, which is anything but that. It's stigmatized and you're broken and you may as well be with your dirty trench coat on under the bridge, which is statistically so far from the truth. And so it's it's the language, it's the identity, and it's understanding your personality. And in true actuality, coaching helps with that, because this isn't a light switch type of thing where you're like, I get up today and it's spontaneous sobriety, because you got to do a lot of inner work to understand what works for the person who's contemplating this lifestyle change.
Yeah. And there's also the other component that I find really fascinating. And it's funny because I quit drinking earlier this year, temporarily, I want to say. Wasn't sure if I was going to go back to it, but when I did start to slowly integrate it back into my life, what I realized is that so much of my relationship with alcohol is habitual. And what I mean by that is like winding down for my day, pouring a cocktail or a glass of wine or whatever, right? And not even like necessarily needing it, but it's like, that's the thing I do at 5 o'clock or whatever, right? And someone I was chatting with recently, we were discussing kind of the importance of substituting and filling that void that can be left from something, because I think that is a component. And because thankfully I'm not that label alcoholic, I've never had to go to meetings, and I don't know if maybe this is something that they talk about there, but I think that's something, at least from a social perspective, that we don't really talk about. What do you substitute it with? Especially when you're at brunch with friends, right? You have to figure out what goes in that void. Maybe you can articulate that differently.
Yeah, I can sum it up in what is that drink? What are we making that drink mean?
Yeah.
Because when I hear brunch, I hear coffee. When you hear brunch, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, when you hear brunch, you might think
it's mimosas.
But
Yeah, totally.
I think coffee.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, Toni Party Time. She thought first Bloody Mary, spicy, and then a mimosa.
And then bottomless mimosa.
That's what Toni Party Time was doing. But here's the thing. This goes back to our belief system. What are we making it mean? What do we believe alcohol's bringing to the brunch in this example? And do we believe that the brain is plastic, meaning neuroplasticity? You can change how you think through thought work. And science proves that. The brain is plastic. It can change at any age. And so that's where the coaching helps, because, again, it's not like all of a sudden you're like, oh, Toni thinks brunching is about coffee. Me too now. Because that's not how it works, because there are certain beliefs. And let's talk about this. There's the set and the setting. Brunches, there's a vibe, right? There's this vibe. It's the weekend, it's Sunday, whatever. Yeah. And there's waffles and mimosas and whatever. It's sunny. And then there's the people you're with. And those people can be not their fault. I call them trigger people. It's not their fault, but we make them mean that.
Yeah.
And there's so much meaning to shutting off at the end of the day. What if shutting off is not pouring yourself a glass of whatever it is that you like to drink? Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe you want to launch a podcast. I know you and I are doing that right now, but what is something you've always wanted to do that you've never had time for? And I use air quotes because
Totally. Yeah.
let me give you a fun little fact on this part. I gave myself, and it's different for everyone, but I gave myself about 800 hours back a year when I quit drinking.
Wow.
And that's thinking about drinking, actively drinking, recovering from drinking. So I shut all that. If you quit watching TV, you're going to give yourself back hundreds of hours a year too. Or I just quit drinking, but it could be other things. And you give yourself that time back. And then you're like, what do I always wanted to do? I've always wanted to write a book, or I've always wanted to start a podcast, or I've always wanted to paint watercolor, or I've always wanted to walk the El Camino. I don't know. But now you've got a goal.
Yeah.
And so then there's different meaning behind shedding it.
Say more about what else changed for you once you removed alcohol from the equation.
Oh, what didn't change? My job didn't change because I stayed here. My family didn't change, but you asked me what did change, so I'll tell you what did change.
No, those are good things that didn't change though.
Yeah, there's a lot that didn't change. A lot changed with me. My self-worth went up, my self-confidence, my self-value, my self-trust. I like me. I like hanging out with Toni. Like, I love my solidarity. There's never loneliness anymore because I like who I am. Yeah, I have high integrity. I'm more empathetic. I'm softening in a good way. The defenses are down. I'm just more present. I'm more clear, and I am outspoken in a way that is to help others. So that justice seeker in me is validated because I know that I am just one version of me. There's not Toni party time and Toni sober time. There's just Toni now.
Yeah. I think the word clarity probably struck me the most in what you said, because I think that's like probably one of the most important things that you achieve when you don't have that vice anymore, or whatever we want to call it. It's just the clarity. It's beautiful. Is there anything that still surprises you about the choice? Maybe something that you didn't anticipate when you made it?
It's been 5.5 years now. Is there something surprising? I'm just thinking, mornings never get old anymore. And never that they did, but I wake up and I'm just like ready to seize the friggin' day. I love when I wake up and my first thought is, did I drink last night? How much did I drink? Did I piss someone off? Is my husband mad at me? Did my kids see me? Who did I text? Did I take my makeup off? Did I get in my pajamas? What did I say? Ugh. Like, I love opening my eyes, and that's not my first thought anymore. It never gets old. And I'm surprised this day I still think about that. And I had a drinking dream the other night, and that surprised me. I haven't had one of those in a while.
So I'm actually really fascinated by that, because when I took my little hiatus, and I guess when I say I've gone back to it, like my new kind of idea is to just drink on weekends, right? So I used to drink pretty much every day at the end of my day, right? I was at the habit. And then my new rule is if I'm going out with friends, like I'll just do it socially, right? And to your point, the days that I don't drink, the next morning is like this beautiful awakening and it's not even the who did I text, what did I say? It's just more of I actually got a good night's sleep, or that's something we haven't even talked about. Your sleep is exponentially better. And it's interesting because I wanted to try really hard not to make this an episode about stopping drinking, right? Because I feel like your story is so much bigger than that. And that's why I really wanted to lead with your journey thus far. But I just think that this conversation is so important right now. And so I do want to stay on it a little bit longer, because I think I'm fascinated by someone who, I think the thing that fascinates me about it is that you and I, we don't identify as alcoholics. We never gave ourselves that label, right? There wasn't an inciting incident that said you have to stop or else, right?
Right.
It's just something that we've looked around and said, maybe our lives could be better, clearer without this substance. And I feel like there's probably so many people that if it's not a conscious thought, it's something that they've suppressed, and we're bringing it to the surface. And so I really love this aspect of the conversation. Are there other norms maybe in your industry or leadership culture that you've had to examine beyond the drinking to transition back?
Yeah, I would say definitely it's the gender role. And these two things are the things that I am rebellious on and didn't even know it at the time. And there are so many norms that I'm breaking here. So actually, let me tell you about one of the things I'm most proud of, that in order to bring this stuff to light and shake up the hockey world. Hockey is, of the 100% of people that attend a game, 20% are avid hockey fans. They're hockey purists, the season ticket holders. And then there's the other 80%. And the other 80% are entertainment seekers. And so when we build a hockey season, we really look at it as a three-legged stool. So we have our tradition, because we've been around 52 years, so like our traditional games. Then we have our pop culture themed games like Bluey or Marvel or whatever's wicked, whatever's cool at the time. And then we have cause games. And that's where we'll do like a deaf awareness game or autism awareness or Black heritage or hockey for her. And my legacy, the thing I hope to be remembered for, is bringing rainbow ice to Kalamazoo. And we're the only professional hockey team ever to dye the ice rainbow. And we do it every January. And the first year we did it, we damn near broke the internet because it is so polarizing. But I really wanted people to know that hockey is for everyone. And this was partnered with the NHL. And it's not just about LGBTQ+, it's part of it. But it's also about all those other groups I just mentioned and several I didn't mention. And that also represents our front office and downstairs with our coaching staff. We are all representing of all those different factors. And so I bring that all the way around to say everyone's welcome here. Drinker, non-drinker, person of color, men, women, children, people with abilities, whatever. Like everyone is welcome here. Socioeconomic, and it's safe to be here and be who you are. Just be you. So it encapsulates everything and what I'm trying to do.
I love that so much. I have a question for you that I saved to the end. You probably might know what it's about. It's in that realm, specifically the entertainment realm, but we'll get to that at the very end. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you say you're curious about, because a lot of these also resonated deeply with me. Identity, who we are when we stop relying on external validation, coping mechanisms, titles. We talked a little bit about that, but I think that these are all themes that I am currently exploring in my work, this podcast, coaching. It seems to be a theme with a lot of folks who are seeking to better understand the current moment we find ourselves in, what actually matters. Talk a bit about identity and what it even means to discover one's identity in these times.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important for us to understand that one, identity isn't permanent. And I think that identity is fluid. I know that word's been used a lot lately, but essentially it means it changes. And we define ourselves. So it was really important to me to have an identity that if that identity changed, I wouldn't collapse because it was, if I'll use my job as an example. I'm proud of what I do for a living. Is it challenging? Yeah. Is there stuff that I'm working on to help bolster women in sports? Absolutely. But is it such a gift in my life every day? Yes. But I'm not always going to be the GM of a men's professional hockey team. I'm so much bigger than my occupation. And so it's important not only for me to understand that because that brings value. So if this job goes away one day, which it will, I'm not going to work forever. Who am I without it? I'm still a wife. I'm still a mom. I'm still a daughter. I'm still a leader. I'm a business owner. I'm a podcaster. I'm an author. And what identities do I want to add in that I'm not yet? And so and what gives me energy and what excites me and gives me meaning. And so that's what identity means to me, and understanding that, because it goes back to labels and language, because these things that we label ourselves, these identities we label ourselves with and how we talk to ourselves matter, because that's how we show up each day. So those of us that are working on this, or with us coaches or our clients, we're 1%ers, because most people aren't doing this work.
Yeah.
We are.
I really love what you said about identity being fluid. And yes, I think that word has a weird place in our society these days, but
it does.
I think it's so important to emphasize that, right? Because we're living in a world now where I'm sure everybody knows someone, if they haven't themselves, been laid off right? And we tie so much of our identity to our jobs, unfortunately, in America. But like, you can change, you can evolve. And to your point about like transferable skills, right? Like you just said, you'll always be a leader. And I feel the same exact way. Like, I might not be leading an organization within a greater organization, but I'm still a leader in my life, in my day to day. And I always have been, right? No one can really change that. But the fluidity that comes with that is like, how am I leveraging those skills? And I wish that we could see, the non-coaches of the world could see that you are so much more than whatever your identity is in this moment, right? Even if it's like just a parent, right? You're not just a parent. You're a human being outside of that. Has living more authentically in this one area of your life made it easier for you to be honest in other areas?
Oh, yeah. And it's taken time because it's hard. It's hard to look at yourself and be like, man, I am sucking at this. Whatever this is, I am not a good drinker. I am not. And I knew I couldn't moderate. And so I just knew that wasn't in me because every time I picked up a drink, I'm like, ooh, am I going to break out in handcuffs here? I don't know. So I just was like, I didn't trust myself. So for me, moderation was off the table. Okay, what did that mean? Because when I shed that part and then I started to like myself again, I'm like, okay, I'm not for everyone. And that's okay. That I like who I am now, and that's authentic and genuine. And I actually get that compliment. People stop me and say, Toni, you're just you. And I'm like, yes. And because I'm not an Instagram highlight reel. I don't want, we all have shit. And so I just feel like by quitting drinking and stepping up and speaking out for women where I can make a difference, I'm not the most popular person in the room, but I'm genuine to who I am and authentic.
Yeah. And people see that, right? And even if I always think when people have an aversion to that person, it's because you're reflecting basic psychology, obviously, but it's because you're reflecting something in them that they're not willing to reconcile. You've called this a quiet rebellion, and I love that. Say more about what a quiet rebellion means to you.
When I quit drinking, it was like, at first I did it quietly. And I set I was like, I'm not going to drink for 30 days. I'm going to put myself in a Toni timeout because I love alliteration. And then I was like, after 30 days, and by the way, it's going to sound simple, but it wasn't emotionally, it was not easy. And then I added 3 more weeks on. And then I was like, we're almost to the end of 2020. This has been a crazy year. I think I'm going to talk about it more publicly now. And that was really to close a loophole because I knew if I didn't out myself in any way, I would I'd crawl through that loophole and start drinking again. And
so accountability was your motivation there.
Yes. Okay. And I used to hate that word. But
Same.
I'm like, that's where I thrive is when I hold myself accountable of other people. It's not a bad thing. I actually thrive in that space.
Interesting. And now I'm asking myself, like, is that why I hate that word so much? Because I don't like being held accountable? Probably.
And I felt that same way for a long time. Yeah. But I quietly rebelled against alcohol as I gained confidence. And then I outed myself on social media on day 80. And I was so uncomfortable because I knew I'd be judged. But then I was like, I just kept pushing through that discomfort of while I'm rebellious, I want people to like me. And I know everyone's like, oh, you shouldn't care what people think. But I do on some level. We do.
Everybody does. Yeah.
And so there are times when I'm out loud about it, and there were times when I kept it close to the vest. And I pick my times and I pick my spaces when it makes sense. I try not to be an evangelist. And so I help when I'm helping other people, when I'm coaching them, I'm like, okay, how do you want this to be? Because there's a difference between privacy and secrecy.
Sure.
Right. And so it's really, again, with the language and what makes sense for the person in front of me, what they want to accomplish and how they want to show up. And are they worried about getting fired from their job because they quit drinking? I used to worry about that. What if they don't want me to work here because I quit drinking?
When I was at a startup, that was my fear every day. When we're doing happy hour, I'm like, oh God, really? That's a genuine fear that people have. I guarantee you.
It is. Now, I know now that's a limiting belief because
sure.
Wait, if I quit drinking, I'm not going to have a job. How does that make any sense?
Because you're not fun, because you're not a team player, because I think there's a real sentiment behind it, right? Like legally, maybe not, but to your point, like it's a thing.
It really is. And when I stopped then I decided, okay, if that's the case, Toni, then this isn't for you. And
Totally.
that made it like, okay, this is what you're doing now. And here's the thing, more and more people have quit drinking after I quit in this world, or they'll come to me and they'll tell me like, Toni, or they just do dry July or dry January or sober October. And they'll come talk to me about like, awesome. Cause I don't care. I care about them, but I don't care if people drink or don't drink. You do you.
Yeah.
I'm not judging anyone.
So there's someone listening right now that has their own version of this, right? Maybe it's not alcohol. Maybe it's just something that, to your point, they've outsourced a feeling, right? That they haven't figured out how to cope with yet. What would you say to them?
What I would say is tell one person, just one, and someone trusted. It could be your partner. It could be a clergy person. It could be your doctor. It could be your neighbor. I don't care. Say it out loud. Because up here, we have all these wonderful conversations with ourselves. But when we start to say it out loud, it gives it more meaning. And then once you tell one person, maybe it's the next step is finding a book or a podcast or a coach or whatever you want to do. But start talking about it. That makes a huge difference.
Accountability.
It really is. You got to just tell one person.
What has you hopeful?
What has me hopeful? I'll be turning 48 here in June, and I am so excited for the second chapter, the second half of my life as I crawl to 50. I've done the heavy lifting in the front half.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for the back half because life's gotten a little easier because I'm just me. And I found myself in a really good place, even on the bad days.
Yeah.
I've surrounded myself with like-minded people, and I continue to accomplish the goals that I have set for myself. And some I don't achieve, but the big ones I continue to. So I'm hopeful for what's to come in the next, I'm going to live to 100. So in the next 50 years.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
Listen, they say if you can make it to 2030 right now, that you're going to live a very long and healthy life. So
oh, really?
let's put, that's like an AI thing. It's in the AI spaces, right? Yeah, we totally got this. Okay, so I would obviously be doing a great disservice to people listening if I had someone so closely connected to the world of hockey on my show and didn't ask about heated rivalry. So has it had an impact on the sport? Talk a little bit about it.
Of course. Yeah. So a lot of things are happening at the same time in the world of hockey between heated rivalry and the Olympics for the men's and women's team. It has been a hot thing. And for those of you who have read the book Pucking Around, that's brought the world of hockey into a whole different level.
Interesting. I don't even know about that one.
Emily Rath, read it.
Okay, I will do that.
Read it. And it's a whole series, but I only read the first book. So it does get brought up to me periodically, but more, hey, have you watched it? And that it's good. And I haven't watched it yet, but I will. I've got a long flight coming up, so I'm going to watch it. But it's opening doors to more conversations, to things that I have been passionate about and supportive of and ally of for my whole life. So I'm excited to see that it's in pop culture mainstream.
Part of the reason I asked that question is because my understanding is that there has been, especially in professional men's hockey, a lot of homophobia. And I don't know to what extent that's accurate, right? But I think that such a big part of your journey is obviously like the male dominated aspect of the world that you're in. And what we mean is the straight male dominated aspect, right? So there's something really interesting about that particular sport being the center of focus of this show. It really is a good show. I think once you get past I always tell people, I hate when people say, oh, you just have to watch the first few episodes. It starts with one premise, right? Which is just the sex. But then beyond that, it's such a beautiful love story. And and hockey obviously is like a background character, but definitely watch it. It's a really good show.
And I think and I don't know, I'd have to do some research, but Emily's book, Pucking Around, it's interesting because it calls into question sexuality in a sport that is very hetero. And it's open. And I find it interesting that these creators are picking this sport.
Totally. That's very interesting. Toni, thank you so much. This conversation has truly it's the kind of conversation that I love to have. I feel like a lot of people probably heard themselves in what you shared today. So I just want to say thank you. Please let our listeners know how they can connect with you and your work.
So everything that I'm working on is at toniwill.com, 8 letters, TONIWILL. My podcast, Women In, is there. My coaching services. I have a conference called empowHER. My book, Rebellious Success, is on pre-sale. So yeah, it's all at toniwill.com.
Thanks for spending some time with me today. Choosing to step off autopilot and think differently about your life takes work, and I don't take it lightly that you're here. If today's episode resonated, the best way to support the show is to share it with someone who might need to hear it. And whenever you're ready to go deeper, whether through free worksheets, guided audio reflections, or one-on-one coaching, you can find everything over at thinkoutsideThelines.com. Be well, and I'll catch you next time.